King Kong is a giant gorilla-like creature who has captured the imaginations of audiences worldwide since his first appearance in the 1933 classic film King Kong. The story of King Kong centers on the themes of nature versus civilization, the dangers of exploitation, and the consequences of human interference with the natural world. The character also influenced countless other giant monster films, contributing to the rise of the giant monster genre, or kaiju in Japan. King Kong's influence is most notably seen in the creation of Godzilla and the eventual Godzilla vs. King Kong crossovers, which combined two iconic monsters from East and West. King Kong is typically portrayed as a massive gorilla, with varying sizes across films, from around 30 feet tall in the 1933 original to over 300 feet in the MonsterVerse. Kong often exhibits human-like intelligence and emotions, forming connections, especially with the female lead, who usually represents kindness and empathy. Kong's encounters with humans often highlight the destructiveness of human exploitation and greed. His tragic downfall, particularly in earlier adaptations, emphasizes the impact of human intrusion into nature. The movies. King Kong, 1933. The 1933 King Kong is a pioneering giant monster film directed by Marion C. Cooper and Ernest B. Schoedsack. Blending adventure, romance, and horror, the film follows Carl Denham, an ambitious filmmaker, as he leads an expedition to Skull Island to capture footage of exotic wildlife. Accompanied by actress Ann Darrow and first mate Jack Driscoll, they arrive on the mysterious island, where they encounter Kong, a giant gorilla-like creature worshipped by the island's natives. After Kong captures Ann, Denham and his crew pursue him through a perilous jungle filled with dinosaurs and other deadly creatures. They ultimately manage to subdue Kong and bring him back to New York City as a spectacle. The story reaches its tragic climax when Kong escapes, scales the Empire State Building with Ann, and faces a fatal attack by fighter planes. Cast: Fay Wray as Ann Darrow, Robert Armstrong as Carl Denham, Bruce Cabot as Jack Driscoll, Frank Riker as Captain Englehorn, Noble Johnson as Skull Island native chief, Steve Clemente as Witch Doctor, James Flavin as second mate Briggs, Victor Wong as Charlie the Cook. King Kong 1933 is celebrated for its groundbreaking special effects and ambitious cinematography. Willis O'Brien, a pioneering stop-motion animator, brought Kong and the film's prehistoric creatures to life with stop-motion animation, adding a sense of realism that captivated audiences. O'Brien's techniques included miniature sets and innovative lighting to create lifelike movements, establishing a new standard for visual effects. The film's atmosphere combines eerie jungle landscapes, iconic urban scenes in New York City, and suspenseful sequences that keep viewers on edge. The production of King Kong was complex and expensive, especially for the era. It was estimated to have cost around $672,000, an enormous budget during the Great Depression. Despite these high production costs, the film proved to be a massive commercial success, earning over $2 million at the box office during its initial release, a sum that far exceeded its budget. It continued to generate revenue in subsequent re-releases over the years, cementing its legacy as one of the most profitable films of the 1930s. Son of Kong 1933. The film follows Carl Denham, who returns from New York City after Kong's tragic fall from the Empire State Building. With mounting lawsuits and a tarnished reputation, Denham is eager to escape his troubles. He partners again with Captain Englehorn for a new expedition. They journey to the Dutch East Indies, where Denham learns of a hidden treasure rumored to be on Skull Island. Along the way, they meet Hilda, a young singer and dancer who joins them on their journey after a string of unfortunate events. Once back on Skull Island, Denham and his crew encounter Kong's offspring, affectionately referred to as Little Kong. Unlike his father, Little Kong is gentle and playful, with a friendly personality that quickly earns Denham's trust. Throughout the film, Denham feels guilty for the tragedy his expedition caused, and he becomes protective of Little Kong. As they search for the treasure, they face various creatures, including dinosaurs and giant monsters, leading to thrilling action scenes. In the film's climax, Skull Island begins to sink into the sea, forcing Venom and his companions to flee. In a heroic act of self-sacrifice, Little Kong helps save Venom but is tragically lost as the island disappears beneath the waves. Cast: Robert Armstrong as Carl Denham, Helen Mack as Hilda Peterson, Frank Riker as Captain Englehorn, Victor Wong as Charlie the Cook. Director: Ernest B. Schoedsack. Son of Kong was made on a significantly lower budget than its predecessor, with an estimated cost of around $250,000 to $270,000. This reduced budget is evident in the simpler storyline, fewer effects, and scaled-down sets. Willis O'Brien, who pioneered stop-motion animation in King Kong, worked with limited resources to animate Little Kong and other creatures, though his work remained a highlight. While Son of Kong was moderately successful at the box office, it did not come close to the financial success or cultural impact of King Kong. It earned approximately $616,000, which was profitable but still underwhelming compared to the original. The rushed production and lower budget limited its reception, and critics found it less thrilling than King Kong, though it received praise for its light-hearted tone and sympathetic portrayal of Little Kong. King Kong vs. Godzilla 1962. The plot centers on two separate stories that eventually converge. Mr. Taco, the head of Pacific Pharmaceuticals, is desperate to boost his television ratings. He learns of a giant monster on Faroe Island worshipped by the natives as a god, King Kong. Taco sees this as a publicity opportunity and organizes an expedition to capture the creature and bring it to Japan. Meanwhile, Godzilla, who was previously encased in an iceberg, breaks free and begins a destructive rampage across Japan. As Kong arrives in Japan, the two monsters ultimately face off, leading to a climactic showdown. The first fight between Kong and Godzilla ends inconclusively, but their final battle takes place on Mount Fuji, where the two engage in a brutal clash. In the end, King Kong manages to drag Godzilla into the ocean, and only Kong resurfaces, swimming back towards Faroe Island. The ambiguous ending leaves the victor somewhat open to interpretation, though King Kong is implied to have won. Cast: Tadao Takashima as Osamu Sakurai, Kenji Sahara as Kazuo Fujita, Ichiro Arishima as Mr. Taco, Jun Dazaki as General Shinzo. Director: Ishiro Honda. King Kong vs. Godzilla had a significantly higher budget than most Toho kaiju films at the time, reportedly around 150 million yen, approximately $420,000, making it one of Japan's most expensive productions of that period. The increased budget allowed for color filming, enhanced special effects, and new costume designs for both monsters. The movie was a massive box office success, grossing about 352 million yen, $1.75 million in Japan alone and over $10 million in the United States. It became one of Toho's highest-grossing films of the era and boosted international interest in the kaiju genre, leading to more sequels and crossovers in both the Godzilla and King Kong franchises. King Kong Escapes 1967. The film's story centers around the nefarious Doctor Who, a mad scientist working for an unnamed foreign government. Doctor Who has created a mechanical double of King Kong, known as Mechanicon, to mine Element X, a powerful radioactive substance that he plans to use as a weapon. However, Mechanicon malfunctions due to the intense radiation, so Doctor Who decides to capture the real King Kong to continue his plan. Meanwhile, the heroic Commander Carl Nelson, Lieutenant Jiro Nomura, and Lieutenant Susan Watson, played by Linda Miller, are on a United Nations submarine mission near Kong's home, Mondo Island. They encounter the real King Kong, who becomes infatuated with Susan. When Doctor Who captures King Kong and hypnotizes him to work in his mind, the creature eventually breaks free, setting the stage for an epic showdown between King Kong and Mechanicon in Tokyo. The battle culminates at Tokyo Tower, where Kong defeats his robotic counterpart, ultimately thwarting Doctor Who's scheme. Cast: Rhodes Reason as Commander Carl Nelson, Linda Miller as Lieutenant Susan Watson, Akira Kurata as Lieutenant Jiro Nomura, Issei Yamamoto as Doctor Who, Mia Hama as Madame Piranha, Director Ishiro Honda. King Kong Escapes had a budget of approximately 200 million yen, around $560,000, a relatively large amount for a Toho kaiju film at the time. The movie benefited from Toho's expertise in special effects, led by effects director Eiji Tsuburaya, who designed the Kong and Mechanized Kong suits, miniature sets, and explosive scenes for the climactic battle. Though King Kong Escapes was less profitable than other Toho films like King Kong vs. Godzilla, it still enjoyed moderate success, especially with its simultaneous US and Japanese releases. Its box office earnings were sufficient to cover production costs, though specific revenue figures were not disclosed. The film was popular among younger audiences and became a cult classic, especially in the US, where it frequently aired on television in the years following its release. King Kong 1976. The film begins with oil executive Fred Wilson, who believes he's discovered an untouched island with massive oil reserves. Wilson assembles a team, including paleontologist Jack Prescott, to explore the island. On their journey, they rescue Dwan, a young woman found adrift in a life raft after a shipwreck. Dwan becomes the focus of Kong's attention, leading to the iconic Beauty and the Beast narrative. Once on the island, the team encounters natives who worship a giant ape known as Kong. The natives capture Dwan and offer her as a sacrifice to Kong, who takes her to his jungle lair. Despite her fear, Dwan forms a bond with Kong, who treats her gently. Prescott and Wilson eventually capture Kong, bringing him back to New York as a publicity stunt. Kong is displayed as a commercial attraction but soon escapes, wreaking havoc on the city. The climactic scene departs from the original film's Empire State Building finale. Instead, Kong climbs the World Trade Center, where he is ultimately gunned down by helicopters, falling to his death in a tragic conclusion. Cast: Jessica Lange as Dwan, Jeff Bridges as Jack Prescott, Charles Grodin as Fred Wilson, John Randolph as Captain Ross. Director John Gillerman. The 1976 King Kong had an estimated budget of $24 million, making it one of the most expensive films of its time. The film's high production costs went toward the construction of a massive mechanical Kong, elaborate jungle sets, and the World Trade Center scenes. Although the mechanical Kong was ultimately underutilized, the special effects, led by Carlo Rambaldi and Rick Baker, were revolutionary for their time. The film was a commercial success, grossing approximately $90 million worldwide, which made it profitable and one of the top-grossing movies of 1976. Despite mixed reviews, audiences flocked to see the spectacle, contributing to its box office success.
The Beast, and starring the eighth wonder of the world.